Hello guys, how are you? Today I want to speak to you about depression and 5 principles which really helped me overcome it and let go of it, and hopefully you will find them really helpful as well. Now, depression is a very heavy topic that many people suffer from, and I find it is not often discussed when speaking about self-growth and spirituality, yet it can benefit so many people to know about the principles of self-growth and spirituality to help them overcome depression. Personally, I had my own experiences with depression and struggles, and that is actually how I started my self-growth and spiritual journey. And in fact, they said that 15% of adults, about 15% will experience depression, and that 300 million people right now in the world are experiencing it. And I personally know that many people are struggling with it and don't know how to deal with it and do not know how to overcome it. I want to tell you that I understand how hard it can be and the amount of pain and suffering that comes with depression. But I also want to tell you that you can overcome it and be happy and enjoy your life. You don't have to suffer, and you're definitely not stuck in depression forever like I believed I am. So these are 5 principles, very powerful principles that personally I use to overcome depression and hopefully can help you or someone you know. So the first principle is that any human being contains in him the potential to be happy and be free from suffering. The second principle is that our thoughts and emotions are not telling us the truth necessarily. The third principle is that fighting depression only makes it stronger and it only makes us suffer more. The fourth one is the positive effect of reading positive books. And the fifth one is that you are not your depression. The first principle that helped me overcome depression is that knowing that every human being has in him the potential to be happy and free from suffering. So when I was experiencing depression for a very long time, it felt very real, very permanent. I really felt like that's just gonna be my life experience for now. And that I even started to believing that genetically I was born to be depressed or something like that, because I really did not know how to be happy. And I was suffering for so long that I was sure it was my permanent situation. And I know from experience that a lot of people have the same thoughts, that they're going to be stuck in depression forever. That's their destiny. So as I had these thoughts about me being stuck in depression, I started to wonder, though, like, were I not happy in the past? And I started to realize that I do have happy memories, and that even in the last year I had happier moments and worse moments. So what I realized is that depression was not as solid and permanent as I thought. Yes, I was experiencing it for the last few years, but it wasn't always the same strength. Sometimes the thoughts are really dark. Sometimes they were mildly dark. Sometimes I felt slightly better and even had hope that I'm recovering. Sometimes I lost hope. Sometimes I resisted depression. Sometimes I gave up and yielded to it. And later on, with practicing, I was accepting and noticing and observing it. So it was not permanent as it seemed. It was fluctuating between different strengths. As I was noticing this, it really made me realize that maybe I do have the potential to be happy and that I can still recover my happiness. And it really gave me hope and motivation to continue practicing and not to give up on my happiness. So this principle is really about remembering and knowing that we all have this capacity to experience happiness and peace. Buddhists call it Buddha nature, and this principle really helped me in having the motivation to not give up, to Not just say, okay, I'm gonna suffer my entire life, but to actually practice and take effective means and action so I can be happier. The second principle is that our thoughts and emotions are not necessarily telling us the truth. So depression comes with a very dark baggage of negative thoughts that we experience on a day-to-day basis. And what depression actually is a very extreme version of negative thoughts that appear very often, and they stir up negative emotions. Notice that I said that I experience those thoughts and emotions. That's because while these thoughts and emotions felt very real, it's just that they felt very real. Yes, the emotions we feel are real, and the thoughts themselves exist, but their content is not necessarily truth. So thoughts and emotions can really distort our perception together. Say you have an outside stimulus, and now your thoughts interpreted it, and often they interpret it unconsciously or without you noticing even, and then immediately what you usually notice is a very strong negative emotion. So you think that that outside stimulus made you feel that negative emotion. If you look at it closely, you can notice that what actually happens is that after the outside stimulus comes, let's say somebody cuts you out in traffic, and then you feel anger in a millisecond. But what happens in that millisecond is your brain unconsciously usually interprets it, creates a story about that guy. Maybe he said he's an asshole, he's a bad person or something like that, and that in turn creates the emotion of anger. But what usually happens is that we feel the anger and we believe that that guy caused us to feel anger, and we miss out that the story about that guy caused the anger. So it's the opposite of what we usually assume. And when you realize this and you experience depression, you can really start putting doubt in all those strong emotions. When you realize that no, it's not that the emotions are very strong because the thoughts are real. The emotions are very strong because we believe the thoughts are real. The emotions we feel are not evidence for how real and truthful is the content of these negative thoughts. They are evidence for how much we believe in these negative thoughts. In fact, you can have negative thoughts, and if you don't believe them at all, you're not going to experience the negative emotion. And if you have thoughts saying like, oh no, I'm believing these thoughts and emotions, or thoughts judging you for believing in these thoughts, well, you can stop believing in these thoughts as well. This principle can prove to be very helpful because, excuse me, the less you believe your thoughts and the less you react again to your emotions, so you have the emotional reaction, then you react to it like, oh no, I hate this emotion, be gone emotion. The less reactivity and the less you believe your thoughts, the weaker your emotions become, your negative emotions, the weaker your depression gets, the stronger you become, and it stops impacting your action and it stops distorting your point of view of things. So the third principle is that fighting depression only makes it stronger and only makes us suffer more. So when we often experience negative emotions, and that's just about negative emotions, when depression is very, very powerful and strong negative emotions, then we often want them to go away. But the thing is that resisting them, well, now not only you have the negative emotions on one hand, now you have on the other hand your resistance, you have maybe anger towards the emotion, blame, you can even feel like a failure or helplessness if you were not succeeding in making the emotion go away. So what I found is that resisting or fighting these emotions is just making me feel even worse. So you may ask yourself then, what can I do if not fight it? Well, let's take a real world metaphorical example. Like, say I have a cut in my hand, like right here. Well, if I start fighting this cut, it's not gonna help. You're gonna say, go away, cut, or something of the sort. What's gonna heal this cut is a band-aid and time. Well, maybe if it's a really deep cut, you need to stitch it. Well, the same thing is with emotional wounds. That shouting at them or trying to make them go away does not heal them. To heal them, you need to change your point of view, let go of negative beliefs, and also time is a factor, in fact. One effective thing that can help is that a few times a day maybe you can just practice. Say to yourself, okay, for the next minute, I don't care how I feel or what thoughts come in my head. And you just observe, notice the thoughts and emotions coming, and not fight them at all. And it can be very freeing, in fact, because it's very exhausting to fight emotions and thoughts all day. Instead, taking a relaxed approach, not believing or going with them, just not resisting them as well, just watching them come and go. Well, this can actually be effective in at least not making you feel worse, and even making you feel better with time, because in fact you're stopping negative reactions, because resistance is a negative reaction. You can even sometimes tell yourself like a mantra, hey, I accept where I am in my personal process right now. I accept that I'm feeling this way. I accept that my thoughts are as they are. I accept myself and the world as it is. Now, just make sure when you do this, you're accepting the current moment. You're not saying in like a defeatist way, I accept that I'm going to be depressed my entire life, because that's not helpful. By accepting the present moment situation, it's just fact that this is the present moment situation, and now at least you're not resisting it and making yourself feel even worse. This third principle really helped me, because now instead of being depression and resistance, well, it was only depression left. And in fact, it can be very healing to let go of resistance as a pattern, because a lot of depression revolves around it. So the fourth principle is the positive effects of reading positive books. And when I was experiencing depression and I decided that I'm not willing to give up on my happiness just yet, then I also at some level realized that I don't have the tools currently to be happy, and I don't know how to experience happiness, because clearly if I knew how, I would have already done it, and what I tried did not work, like resisting it. So I had decided to find and read positive books, and books that will teach me how to be happier, how to live a calmer life. Because when you read these books, a few things happen. First of all, I think is the most important, well, evenly important, is that you're now reading the books from the point of view of the author. You're seeing the world the way the author sees the world, and that can really change your point of view. It can really help you deal with depression, because depression has a very dark point of view coming with it, and now you're exposed to this new point of view, new belief system, and it can really create shifts in your mind and how you view the world. And the second, just as important impact, in fact, is that if you practice what you learn in these books, usually they come with helpful practices, then you can really gradually improve and create helpful changes, meaningful changes in your life. So for me, very helpful books were books like The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, Peace in Every Step by Thich Nhat Hanh, and even without practicing the practices, like I did not have the motivation to start practicing right away. But just reading the books changes your point of view, changes your interpretations, bring you more awareness to what is true and what is real. And then when you start implementing practices, real change begins to happen. So I really recommend reading positive books and books about spirituality and self-growth and self-improvement, whether you're experiencing depression or not, because we can always learn, we can always evolve and grow, and we can always become happier and learn of new ways to live our lives. And well, the best way to learn is from other people, and I really like learning from books. And I truly, truly believe that it can help people with depression to read these books, practice these practices, and honestly for me that's what made the most significant change and improvement, and I really wish for others to improve like that as well and overcome depression. The fifth and last principle is that you are not your depression, and I find this one very important because often you may think to yourself, if you're experiencing it, I am depressed, or if you're experiencing anger, I am angry. Well, if you are depressed, then how can you even talk about it? That's because you are not your depression. You're experiencing depression, and just changing this point of view from saying I am depressed to I am experiencing depression opens for you a new opportunity to experience something else. Saying that you experience depression is also much closer to the truth, because if you are depression, then what is that part that doesn't want to experience depression? Or maybe you have some thoughts that are not depression related, maybe angry thoughts, or maybe you try to instill some happy thoughts. Is, for example, your hand depressed? When you say I am depression, what part are you talking about? Is my nose depressed? Obviously you're referring to a big collection of thoughts and emotions, and the point of view you're speaking in is also involved, but it's not the entirety of you, it's part of you. And that's really, really important to understand, I believe. This really helps to see it this way, because you see that depression is not as solid as you thought. That the emotions in depression itself, like I said, it fluctuates. When you say I am depressed, it sounds very permanent and like it's part of your identity. Well, were you depressed when you were born? No, because that is a lie. That is part of the negative thinking cycle that depression comes with. So remember this, remind yourself, I am not depression. I am experiencing it. And this principle really goes along with principle 2, because it helps you take a step back from your thoughts and emotions and have more skepticism towards these thoughts, such as a thought saying, I am so depressed, I am stuck in depression. Yes, it's your current experience. It might have been your experience for a pretty long time, but it doesn't mean that it can't change. And I'm telling you from my experience that after a long time, with the right actions, with these 5 principles, I did make a change. In conclusion, I really hope that these 5 principles will help you or a friend that is going through rough times. They really helped me recover from depression, and these are really the 5 principles that help me recover from it, practicing them every day. And remember to just do your best with them if you're gonna use them. It takes time. I still don't do them perfectly, but just the fact that I gradually improved doing them helped me overcome depression and enjoy my life much more. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope it helped you or a friend, and if you like my content, I'll be happy if you'll subscribe. Have a great day.